Alright, howdy, I'm Cordless. Today I'm going to walk you through a mashup that I've done using Giant Swarm and Wercker. What this achieves is a continuously deployed container application to Giant Swarm's hosting service. Just as a quick reminder, you're going to need a Giant Swarm account. If you don't have one, go to the website, plug in your email address, click Request Invite. Optionally fill out that survey that we give you on there, and then ping me on Twitter at Cordless. You can also ping us at Giant Swarm, and we'll set you up with a Giant Swarm private alpha, which will get you an account on our private cluster. And now I'll tell you a little bit about Giant Swarm. We're actually developing an stack or a stack that provides you a way to host containerized applications either in the public cloud, one we run, which you will be using with the private alpha, or on-prem with your own servers, or in a hosted fashion in a data center of your choice. Now that I've given you the plug on Giant Swarm, I'm going to give you the plug on Wercker. Wercker is a website that provides continuous integration builds for now includes containers. And what they do is they essentially check out your repo out of GitHub, run some continuous integration tests on it. They do a build of the container, and they can even now do a deployment of the container to a Docker Hub registry. And then I've written a step for Giant Swarm that allows you to deploy a Giant Swarm application. All those words together means that what you can now do is go to 3 websites, GitHub, Giant Swarm, and Wercker, and without any software installed locally, that means you don't need Docker, you can deploy a full web app automatically using Wercker and Giant Swarm. It's pretty cool, and that's what I'm going to do right now. So let's talk a little bit about what you're going to get as an end result. You're going to get this website with a llama on it. It's really exciting, I tell you. That is all served out of the static directory here. To get started, you're going to need to fork this repo that I've created. I've got one fork right now. So I'm going to fork that into my account, into my default organization. You're going to fork it into whatever organization you want. Just need to make sure that Wercker has access to that. Once you fork that, you're going to head on over to Wercker, and you're going to click on Login, and you're going to log in with GitHub. Now, if you haven't been to Wercker before, it's going to ask you for some username and password thingies that you're going to need to plug in. Once you do that, you can go to Create Application and tell it to use your GitHub repository, which you just added. You'll get a little acceptance screen from GitHub saying, hey, you're going to allow Wercker to have access to this, that, and the other on your GitHub account. Here I'm going to select the Swarm Wercker that I just forked, and you can see that's a fork. And I'm going to say use repo, and I'm going to use the default organization, and I'm going to tell it to check out the code without using an SSH key. Now Wercker's going to go off and yank my repo, and it's going to pull that in, and for whatever reason it thinks my wercker.yaml file is invalid. I don't think it is invalid. I don't know what I'm doing wrong there, but regardless it works anyway, so I'm just going to blow past that and tell it to make my application public and click on Finish. Now the next thing that we need to do is tell Wercker that we have a deploy step. So for right now, what Wercker will do is essentially do this part of the wercker.yaml file that's in that repo, which is it's going to run a Python unit test to make sure that the app is up after it launches it in a container. So it's going to provision that container and then test the container. The thing that we're going to do now is we're actually going to tell it to do a deployment of the container that it built. So we're going to add a deploy target, a custom deploy target. We're going to call this deploy target prod, and we're going to tell it to auto deploy on master commits. So what's going to happen is any commits to master on GitHub will be then, it'll use a Wercker hook that will then poke Wercker and tell it to go ahead and start the build. We're going to need some variables. Those variables are listed down here in the giant swarm step that I created. If you like to look at that, you can go check it out. It's on our GitHub repo under Giant Swarm, and it's called Giant Swarm-Worker-Step. If you'd like to take a look at that, you can also go to the registry section of Worker's website and search for it. First thing I'm going to need is an environment variable. Environment variables on Giant Swarm are made out of your user, which I'm going to use the Bant user today for this demo. And then I'm going to tell it to put it in the production environment and click on OK. The next thing that I need to add is my username, and again that's Bant, and then I'm going to click on OK. And finally I'm going to add my password, which today has been changed to foobar so that I can do the video without you guys getting into my Bant account. And then I'm going to click on save, and it's going to save all that stuff to Wercker. And then whenever Wercker fires up and does a build, which we're going to do here in just a second on this swarm Wercker, then what's going to happen is it'll use those environment variables to do the push. And it's going to build the container. It's going to push it to Giant Swarm's registry. I know it's less than ideal to use a username and password from one site and another site. We could use tokens, but unfortunately the Docker Hub repo or registry that we run doesn't use tokenized authentication. We do support that, and if you're interested in an alternate solution to that, be sure to ping me on Twitter. I've got an idea how to do that. Alright, so what we essentially need to do now is kick off this build on Wercker. Now I could click on this button, but the thing is I've noticed that it actually doesn't do a deployment when I do that. It only does the build. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to edit one of these files. I'll just edit the HTML file, and I'm going to say edit, and I'm going to put a smiley face in there. Of course, we need a smiley face on something like that. Where you have a llama on a page, you need a smiley face. And really that's it. That's all I've done. I haven't used Docker or Swarm CLI client or the Wercker CLI client or installed any complicated software on my computer. I just used GitHub to update a file, and there you go. Wercker's working on building this, and is just a second is going to start working on the deployment of this. While it's doing that, I'm going to click on the deployment tab here. You can see it's running through that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the application that it's deploying. It's not overly complicated. The swarm.json file for it is very simple. Giant Swarm does allow you to create some fairly complex applications with some complex dependencies. In this case, it's just a simple Flask application which is written in Python, and it's running on port 5000, which we're exposing to Swacker-user. Again, I used Bant, so it'll be Swacker-Bant.gigantic.io on port 80 being redirected to port 5000 internally on the service. And that's it. There's not really any more to it than that. If you want to create a website, you could totally do that by putting, more stuff in the index.html file. I've got a few images in here you could play with if you'd like to mess around with it and just kind of see what it does. The server.py file is very simple. It's just serving up files out of that static directory using Flask. We could certainly do this with any other type of application. It wouldn't be overly complicated. The only requirement is Flask for this. Alright, I've burned some time, and oh, we're live now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and I'm going to type Swacker Bant.gigantic.io, and there we go. There's our expected llama. So our test is passed. We have a llama on our page, and that's really it. I've just showed you how to take code on GitHub using no other applications, including Docker. Docker's not required to do this, and actually do a live container deployment to Giant Swarm service using Wercker's continuous integration service. Pretty darn cool. If you have any questions, be sure and ping me on Twitter. I'm @Cordless. I do a lot of these videos. Check out the Vimeo account and the Giant Swarm repo account. Love to hear from you. If you've used this or found it useful, let me know. Take care and have a great day.